we got to start today with Tom Brady and his deal. Now, a lot of people will look at the deal and they'll say it's justified. It is what it is. Tom Brady has been an amazing quarterback. Of course, you don't want him to be a lame duck quarterback going into the 2019 season because his contract would come to an end. So they extend him. They do the right thing. They push it out 2 more years. It's not fully guaranteed per se, so it's not like he's going to be there at 43 next year or 44 the year after it, even though he does have contract numbers for those next 2 years. $23 million he'll make this year. $30 million he'll make in 2020, and $32 million he'll make in 2021. But what's most interesting to me about this contract is that it flies in the face of the nonsense that we always hear from quarterbacks. And we can back up about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, when Kirk Cousins was being, in his defense, jerked around a little bit by the Washington Redskins on what kind of deal they wanted to give him. And he obviously wanted to be paid top dollar. The Redskins didn't see him as a top dollar quarterback, so he just kept signing these 1-year, franchise type deals, which blew up his salary to a ridiculous number. And when you listen to Kirk Cousins talk about it, his narrative was, you know what? I got to do what's right for the position. I can't take a less than market deal for a starting quarterback in the National Football League because it's bad for the position. And we've seen this over the last half a decade. Quarterback salaries are exponentially exploding. And it felt like 5 or 6 years ago when a guy was making $22 million as a quarterback in the National Football. We were like, wow, that's what? $22 million for an NFL player? And basically, since you're a starting quarterback, it's guaranteed? $22 million? You kidding? Right? The rest running backs can't get 8. And you're giving quarterbacks $22 million, a full 11 or so % of the cap. And then as high as that one felt, it just kept getting bigger. Then you saw a $25 million deal. Then you saw a $28 million deal. Then a $30 million deal. Carson Wentz, who just signed this offseason, $32 million deal. Aaron Rodgers, $33. Russell Wilson, $35. Like, the number is ridiculous. The numbers are ridiculous. And I get it. It is a quarterback league. I put that in quotes. It's a quarterback league. You got to have a great quarterback in order to win in this league. The problem is all of those great quarterbacks who are making $30+ million a year haven't won in this league. Carson Wentz, who had $32 million, wasn't even the quarterback for the Super Bowl winning Philadelphia Eagles a couple of years ago. That was obviously the legend in Philly, Nick Foles. And just as a quick aside, I got to think one of the great pressures this year in the NFL, maybe not this year, next couple of years in the NFL, is got to be Carson Wentz. Because if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, and they're set up to do it, they have good skill position players, both running backs and wide receivers, tight end. They got a really good defense, especially that front seven. But if he doesn't win a Super Bowl, and 6 or 7 years from now, the Eagles haven't won number 2, he's threatened to be like this weird footnote in the history of the Eagles franchise. Because as great as he was that season, he didn't actually win the Super Bowl. That was the legend of Nick Foles. He could be second fiddle in an interesting way to the legend of Nick Foles. That's a story for a different day. Maybe we'll get into that when we do our training camp 2-a-days with the Philadelphia Eagles. But my point comes back to these guys making $30+ $35 million a year. And one of the reasons that their agents and them, by extension, justify making that much money is because you have to do what's right for the position. You know who's been middle-of-the-road paid quarterback over the last couple of years? Well, you guessed it, Tom Brady. Tom Brady just turned 42 years old. He gets rewarded with an $8 million raise. An $8 million raise to $23 million. An $8 million raise, hear what I'm saying, to $23 million, which is still $12 million less than these guys who are at the top end who had to make that much money because they had to advance the other quarterbacks around the National Football League. What about advancing your damn team? instead of the other quarterbacks around the league. I've heard this narrative for years. You have to take the next step market deal. You have to do it. Because if you don't, then it's a disservice to everybody else that's in your position that are coming behind you. Not on your team, that are coming behind you on someone else's team. Well, let's just take a quick recap of what Tom Brady has done the last 3 seasons, because we tend to forget that he has been paid about $14-15 million over these last 3 seasons. Well, he went and won a Super Bowl against the Atlanta Falcons in unbelievable, highly entertaining fashion, especially in the second half. He won the MVP the following season at 40 years old. Obviously, they lost that Super Bowl to the aforementioned Philadelphia Eagles, but he was the MVP at 40 years old. And if it hadn't been for a couple of really great sequences for the Philadelphia Eagles, he might have won that one as well. And then instead of having a hangover from losing the Super Bowl, what does he do? He goes back to the Super Bowl and wins this year against, or at least last season, against the LA Rams. So, in recap, Super Bowl champion, league MVP, Super Bowl runner-up, Super Bowl champion, making $15 million a year, taking below-market deals so that his team can be better. Not the other quarterbacks that are coming behind him in the National Football League. And so I see this deal from Tom Brady, and I get really it frustrates me that he's really the only one of all of these guys who have made a ton of money for a lot of their careers that sees the big picture, right? And we don't talk about it this way. We talk about Aaron Rodgers is one of the greatest quarterbacks that we've seen, his skill set. He's got 1 championship. Tom Brady's got 6. Russell Wilson, God, he's so dynamic. Every year I watch him, and it's amazing what he does without an offensive line. And ever since Marshawn Lynch went away, that run game hasn't been as special. He should win the MVP. Guess what? He doesn't. Tom Brady wins the MVP, right? Hey, look at Carson Wentz. He's a superstar in the making. He's the future. $32 million. It's well worth it. We got a bargain for $32 million for a guy who's been in the league for 3 years, been hurt for most of it, and hasn't won a Super Bowl yet. I don't understand it. I don't get it. It frustrates me, especially when I look at a guy like Tom Brady, who, yeah, maybe he does have the benefit of having a supermodel for a wife. He can't help it that he found Giselle, or they found each other, I should say. They have a beautiful family. She makes a ton of money, and maybe he doesn't need it. But along the way, he's continually given the New England Patriots a market rate deal. He's continually restructured his contract so that they can save money on their salary cap. Oh, by the way, his $8 million raise this year and restructure that pushes out to 2021 saved the New England Patriots $5.5 million on the salary cap. So are we surprised? Right? We always, what do the Patriots do? What do the Patriots do? They don't really do anything. What does their star do? What is the best quarterback that's ever graced the NFL gridiron? What does he do? He's unselfish. And so when we talk about Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson and all these, and even Kirk Cousins and these other, Matt Stafford, they're selfish. I get it. You want to get yours. You want to make much money as you can. But when you're thinking about the other quarterbacks that are coming behind you, as opposed to the other players on your team that are necessary to win a championship, then what are we talking about? We're talking about the reason that the New England Patriots consistently win championships, because their best player, we always say this, best player has got to lead by example. Your best player has got to be your hardest worker. Your best player has got to be the one that everybody looks up to. Well, not only is Tom Brady that for the New England Patriots, he's also ridiculously and grossly unselfish to the point where he doesn't care if he's the 16th highest paid quarterback in the National Football League. I actually think he's now like 9th or 10th or whatever it is. He finally got himself into the top 10 of highest paid quarterbacks in the National Football League. So I'm never going to be surprised by the New England Patriots, because they found a leader who gets it. It's not about those other quarterbacks. It's not about the precedent that's got to be set for the signal callers that are going to come after him. It's about the guys on his team. There's a reason that the New England Patriots win Super Bowls.